Now, this video is just about logical tests. It's not a particularly tricky thing, really, but it's something that could potentially catch people out in an exam question. So, if you have a look at this code that we have got an if statement, so it's selection. So, selection statement here, and we've got a variable called my score, and it's an integer as an input, so it's a whole number. And essentially, we're just saying if my score is more than 100, we print out one message. Else, or elif my score is more than 60, we print another message. Or else, if the score is 0, we print out another message. And if it's none of those things, we just print out a message saying you did okay. So there are lots of tests here, but how many different outcomes could there be from each of these tests? Well, the answer is 2. There can only be 2 outcomes from each of these tests, because and the first one, my score, it's either more than 100 or it's not more than 100, and that's what we're asking. So we're saying if my score is more than 100, we'll do this, else we'll move on and do something else. So there are 2 options. Essentially, these kind of tests are Boolean tests. We're just saying, is one thing this, or is it another thing, or is it not? So is it this or is it not? So is it more than 100 or not? And then we're asking the same question, but we're saying, is my score, the variable, more than 60 or not? And again, there's just 2 outcomes from that. It's either is or it isn't. On the second one, we're saying, is it 0 or not? Again, there's only 2 outcomes. So anytime we're doing this kind of logical test and they ask the question, how many outcomes could there be? It's always going to be 2. So this question here, I'll just lose that for a moment so we can get it on. Then this question came from a paper, so GCSE paper. And we've got a bit of pseudocode this time. So this is pseudocode. So this backwards arrow is the equivalent of us saying equals. It's an assignment statement. So we've got some variables. We've got a question, a selection here, if. So we've got if delivery distance is less than 5 and order total, etc. And it's just some code they've given to us. There was another bit to this question as well, but this is the question bit that we're interested in. So state how many possible values the result of the comparison delivery distance less than or equal to 5 could have. So just the delivery distance bit, just this bit, delivery distance less than 5. Well, it either is less than or equal to 5 or it's not. So again, our answer is 2. So the answer is 2 because it's either less than or equal to 5 or it's not. So they're just the 2. Now, though, when we ran this as a mock question, quite a lot of people were caught out by this and somewhat confused by the question. And because there are several numbers obviously involved here, lots of people thought that the answer could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Or even 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So lots of people wrote down that the answer was 5. Some people wrote down the answer was 6. But obviously, any of those numbers would be less than or equal to 5. But the question was how many outcomes, what are the possible values of the result? So the question wording may have been a little bit confusing. Possible values the result could have. So that wording might have been a bit confusing for this question, but the answer is 2 for the reason that we said previously, that a logical test where we're saying is something equal to, or is something less than, or is something greater than, it's only going to be yes it is or no it isn't. So that is the idea of logical tests. So if you come across that in the exam and they're asking you how many outcomes from a logical test like any of these, it's going to be 2.